the F-16s from Syracuse were committed to the task of ground attack. Their primary targets were the Republican Guard concentrations in northern Kuwait. Day after day, the F-16s flew out of Al-Kaj, burdened with tons of high-explosive bombs and deadly cluster munitions. A number of pilots from the 138th Tactical Fighter Squadron were veterans of the Vietnam Air War.
The missions, you know, if you contrast them, they were a little bit different. They were a little tamer in Cambodia. I flew 63 missions in Cambodia than they were in Desert Storm. We did a lot of close air support work over there with the Cambodians, but there wasn't nearly as much threat towards the tail end of the war. We didn't have any MiGs to worry about. We didn't have any large AAA pieces, just a lot of small arms fire and probably 37 millimeter as far as AAA, as big as it got. So it wasn't that much of a threat to deal with. Where you compare that with Desert Storm, a hell of a lot more threat. I mean, they had all the SAM systems, they had all the MiGs and everything else, and I guarantee you that first day we went up there was completely different than my first mission in Southeast Asia. So the threat was completely different, but other than flying combat with the camaraderie and the guys and the nervousness and the exhilaration, very, very similar. And, you know, it's I'm lucked out, really. I mean, there's not too many guys flying around at my age that have had 2 combat tours. And as a matter of fact, I can remember in the base we were stationed at in Saudi Arabia at Al-Kharj, I imagine there were, just guessing off the top of my head, 300, 350 fighter pilots there. And I think there were 12 or 13 of us, maybe 15, that had combat experience before. So we were the solemn ones, and all the other guys were all fired up with their hair on fire. Didn't realize that it's not a lot of fun getting shot at, but it's certainly exhilarating.
I flew in Vietnam also. I had 220 missions, 2 tours over in Udor, Thailand. And the difference I found with this one was that there were no restrictions. If we found a tactical target that was a threat to us or the Army, we could hit it, we could kill it. Where there was a lot of restrictions in Vietnam, I flew a lot of North missions. They were similar the first few days, but because of the lack of the restrictions we had, we were able to conduct a tactical operation as the military would do it. The planning was extremely thorough. We were able to eliminate a lot of that threat early on and then just conduct the war as we deemed necessary. And that was probably the biggest difference that I've seen, that this one was very efficient, very economical, I guess, if you could look at it from that standpoint, a short period of time, very few losses. And I think probably the main reason was the military operation with the proper balance of political controls.
The boys from Syracuse were one of a number of Air National Guard units serving on combat duty in the Gulf War. Guard pilots flew reconnaissance aircraft, transports, refueling aircraft, and many other types. And men and women of the Guard kept the planes flying as technicians, radar operators, security police, armorers, and in many other essential roles. But it was the pilots and their aircraft that were the most visible sign of the Guard's role, and the ultimate arbiter of whether the Air National Guard concept had proven successful.
I can tell you this, I could not tell the difference in performance between an Air National Guard unit, an Air Force Reserve unit, and an active duty unit. And if you think about it, it makes sense, because you can't fly an F-16 in sort of a halfway measure. You'll die, you'll get killed. So the Air Force fighter units, Guard and Reserve units, have to be top line of what they do. What we do is we limit the number of missions they have to accomplish, so they don't do night attack and day attack and air-to-air and air-to-ground like some of the active duty units do. In the case of McIntyre and Syracuse, their job was air interdiction and close air support, and they did a superb job.
The pilots and the crew of the Air National Guard are high-tech descendants of America's long militia tradition. The tumultuous changes on the world scene over the past few years have reinvigorated this concept. An essential component of America's air power is provided by the Air Guard.
Their places most of us rarely see, inhabited by dynamic societies, amazing their complexity and intimate look deep into the natural world. Next.